time before the American Revolution, the French and Indian War, and the Great Awakening. Religion had been made political. Dissenters fled England to avoid persecution, and those who settled in the American colonies hoped to worship freely. For over a century, these colonists lived with little interference from the crown. But in the 1740s and 1750s, something extraordinary began, the Great Awakening. This wasn't just a religious revival, it was a spark that lit the fire of independence. My name is Matthew Saxton, and I'm a PhD candidate in history at Liberty University. Today I'll be introducing you to my research on Reverend Benjamin Throop, a Congregationalist minister who lived, preached, and wrestled with questions of faith, loyalty, and liberty through the Great Awakening, the French and Indian War, and the American Revolution. This research video seeks to answer a central question. How did the Great Awakening's challenges to religious authority foster revolutionary thought among American colonists? And how was that reflected in the life and actions of Benjamin Throop and his family? My thesis is that the Great Awakening fostered a revolutionary mindset in colonial America by promoting personal autonomy, dissent, and resistance to centralized authority. Using Throop and his family as a case study, I'll demonstrate how these revivalist ideals became the ideological groundwork for the American Revolution. Benjamin Throop was born in 1727 and graduated from Yale College in 1748. He was ordained as a Congregationalist minister in Norwich, Connecticut, where he served as a pastor for over 4 decades. He became known not only for his sermons, but for his intellectual rigor and moral integrity. In his personal diary from 1741 to 1786, Throop reflected, quote, "I have occasion to reflect upon my past conduct and how far short I have come in my duty as a father, husband, neighbor, and minister. If my transgressions were put in a bundle, they would exceed the sand upon the shore. I can only hope for mercy through the merits of my blessed Redeemer." Throop's role as a regimental chaplain during the French and Indian War placed him in direct contact with soldiers fighting for the crown. His early sermons preached loyalty to the king as part of a Christian duty. But as the Stamp Act and later coercive acts challenged the colonists' liberties, Throop's stance shifted. His 1766 Thanksgiving sermon, delivered after the repeal of the Stamp Act, reveals this change in tone. He stated, quote, "We have escaped not only poverty but slavery. Our liberty as well as property was threatened by that grievous act. Tyranny and despotic power leaves no part of the subject free. Those who command the lives and liberties of their subjects generally claim the government of their conscience also." Throop's evolution from loyal subject to revolutionary preacher can be seen clearly through his sermons. I'll provide 3 key points to demonstrate that the Great Awakening fostered a revolutionary mindset in colonial America by promoting personal autonomy, dissent, and resistance to centralized authority. These points are, number 1, the transformation of Throop's sermons from obedience to resistance. Number 2, the influence of revivalist theology on Throop's sons. And 3, the broader ideological shift towards liberty as seen in the rhetoric of revivalist leaders like Throop. In 1758, Throop's election sermon framed loyalty as a divine command. He declared, quote, "Loyalty being dictated as an essential part of duty, both by the light of nature and revelation." This reflected a broader revivalist theology rooted in obedience to God and to civil authority. Historian Patricia Bonomi explains that revivalist leaders like Throop initially framed loyalty to civil leaders as a religious imperative, drawing from scripture like 1 Peter 2:17, quote, "Fear God, honor the king." But by 1766, Throop's tone had shifted. His Thanksgiving sermon following the repeal of the Stamp Act included this warning, quote, "Tyranny and despotic power leaves no part of the subject free." The language of captivity and tyranny had become central to his rhetoric. This mirrors Ruth Bloch's observation that, quote, The concrete catalysts for this change in evangelicals were the several parliamentary procedures of 1774 and the Quebec Act protecting Catholicism in French Canada. The fear of losing both civil and religious liberty sparked the shift from resistance to outright rebellion in the colonists. Throop's shift from loyal subject to revolutionary leader did not just influence his congregation, it also shaped the lives of his sons. His three sons, Dyer, Benjamin Jr., and William, embodied their father's revolutionary ideals. Dyer Throop, born in 1738, served as a captain in the Connecticut militia and later in the Connecticut state government. Benjamin Jr., born in 1742, served as an officer in the Continental Army, taking a more active role in the physical fight for liberty. William, born in 1745, did not serve militarily, but played a crucial role in his community and as executor of his father's estate, symbolizing his position as a steward of his father's spiritual and intellectual legacy. Albert C. Bates, editor of Rolls and Lists of Connecticut Men in the Revolution, confirms that Dyer and Benjamin Jr. served from the general alarm of May 1775 until 1783. This long period of service reveals the deep commitment the Throop family had to the revolutionary cause. Their decision to risk everything for liberty was the living embodiment of their father's teachings on individual autonomy, personal duty, and defiance of tyranny. Throop's personal evolution was part of a larger movement. Historian Thomas Kidd notes that the Great Awakening's emphasis on individual conscience caused colonists to question centralized authority, not only in the church, but in the government as well. He writes, quote, "The long tradition of anti-Catholicism and the fervor of the Great Awakening had re-energized British Americans' tendency to conflate the civil and spiritual spheres." Throop's sermons, after the Stamp Act repeal, echo this fusion of civil and spiritual authority. James Byrd further supports this view, arguing that revivalist leaders use Scripture as justification for rebellion. He writes, quote, "Religion was at the core of the dispute with British policies, and ministers led the way, engaging the crisis in the light of Scripture." Throop's sermons are prime examples of this trend. In his election sermon, he frames loyalty to the king as a divine command, but by 1766, he invokes covenant theology to demand liberty for his parishioners. His shift from loyalty to defiance reflects the broader ideological shift from religious obedience to revolutionary resistance. In this video, I've provided 3 key points to demonstrate how the Great Awakening fostered a revolutionary mindset in colonial America by promoting personal autonomy, dissent, and resistance to centralized authority. We saw this first in the transformation of Throop's sermons, second in the military service and sacrifice of his sons, and third in the broader shift of revivalist theology towards liberty and defiance of tyranny. Reverend Benjamin Throop's story is not just a personal journey, but a reflection of the American struggle for liberty. His evolution from loyalist to revolutionary mirrors the ideological shift that occurred throughout colonial America. His words inspired his congregation, his ideas shaped his sons, and his legacy continues to illustrate how personal faith became the foundation for revolutionary action. Thank you for joining me on the journey of Benjamin Throop and his family from revival to revolution. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more historical content.